Admiral Kang stood in the center of the great chamber, his blue skin pale with exhaustion. Around him, representatives from hundreds of worlds waited in tense silence. The holographic display behind him showed a map of the galaxy, painted in red, each red dot marking a world that no longer existed. "The outer rim has fallen," Kang announced, his voice heavy with defeat. "The Crimson Horde has broken through our defensive line at Sector 7. A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. The Crimson Horde wasn't just another enemy fleet. They were machines, cold, calculating, and utterly ruthless. They didn't want territory or resources in the way living beings understood them. They wanted everything. Every planet, every asteroid, every scrap of metal in the galaxy would be consumed and transformed into more machines, more ships, more weapons. Counselor Jiwon from the Crystal Worlds leaned forward. "How many systems have we lost?" 17. "Confirmed," Kang replied. "The Andromedans held out for 6 days. The warrior clans of Titan Prime lasted only 3 hours. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone knew what this meant. The Andromedans were legendary for their defensive technology. Their crystal shields could stop almost anything. If they had fallen in 6 days, what hope did anyone else have? Dr. Minji, the galaxy's leading military strategist, stood up slowly. Her tentacles trembled as she spoke. "What about the Nexus Defense Protocol? Our combined fleets?" Kang shook his head grimly. "The Horde adapts faster than we can coordinate. Every tactic we use, every weapon we deploy, they learn from it and counter it within hours. Admiral Hyun's fleet tried a surprise attack 3 days ago. The machines anticipated every move." The room erupted in worried whispers. Species that had been enemies for centuries suddenly found themselves united in terror. The proud Zephyrians, who had never bowed to anyone, looked as frightened as the peaceful gardener folk. "There is one option left," announced Elder Doyon. From his floating chair, his ancient voice carried across the chamber. "The Zenith Gate." Everyone turned to look at the massive viewing screen where the superweapon appeared. It was humanity's size of a small moon, bristling with energy collectors and quantum processors. The Zenith Gate was the Council's ultimate weapon, a device that could collapse space itself, creating a barrier that nothing could cross. "How long to activate it?" asked Counselor Jiwon. 3 days minimum," replied Dr. Minji. "The quantum cores need time to synchronize, and the targeting computers must calculate the exact collapse coordinates." Admiral Kang pulled up another display. Red dots moved across the star map like a spreading infection. "The Horde will reach the core worlds in 48 hours. We don't have 3 days. The reality hit everyone at once. They were going to lose. The greatest civilizations in the galaxy, species that had mastered faster-than-light travel and reshaped entire solar systems, were about to be wiped out by machines that felt nothing and wanted everything. Panic began to spread through the chamber. Representatives started talking over each other, voices rising in desperation. Some demanded immediate evacuation, others wanted to fight anyway. A few simply sat in stunned silence. That's when Lieutenant Seo-hyun burst through the chamber doors. The young communications officer looked exhausted. Her uniform wrinkled from hours at her station. She held a data pad in her shaking hands. "Admiral Kang," she called out, running toward the center of the chamber. "Sir, we're receiving an unusual transmission." Kang turned, grateful for any distraction from the mounting panic. "What kind of transmission, Lieutenant?" "It's coming from the outer rim, sir. Grid coordinates 127.4 by 89.7. It's very faint, but the signal is definitely artificial." Dr. Minji's tentacles stopped trembling. "That's impossible. The Horde controls that entire sector now." Lieutenant Seo-hyun looked at her datapad again. "That's what I thought too, but the signal isn't from the Horde. It's something else entirely. The mathematical patterns are completely different." "Show us," ordered Admiral Kang. The main display changed to show a detailed star chart, way out on the edge of the galaxy, in a small spiral arm that most people forgot existed. A tiny blue dot pulsed with light. "What's there?" asked Counselor Jiwon. Lieutenant Seo-hyun checked her records. "According to our database, it's a young solar system with several planets. The third planet shows signs of primitive civilization. Our last survey was conducted 200 years ago. The inhabitants were classified as pre-contact. They haven't developed space travel yet." Primitives? Dr. Minji's voice carried disbelief. How could primitives send signals through Horde-controlled space? I don't know, admitted the lieutenant, but the signal is definitely coming from them. And there's something else, it's getting stronger. The morning started like any other Tuesday until the sky caught fire. Massive shapes materialized above. Earth's major cities, blocking out the sun with their hulking metal bodies. The ships were enormous, each one the size of Manhattan, covered in strange geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. President Lee was in the middle of a budget meeting when the alert started screaming. Within minutes, she found herself 300 feet underground in the emergency command center, staring at screens that showed humanity's worst nightmare coming true. The aliens weren't here to talk. Orbital Defense Platform 7 is gone, reported General Kim, his voice tight with stress. They took it out with some kind of beam weapon, didn't even slow down. On the main screen, one of the alien ships hovered over Jupiter. Smaller craft swarmed around the gas giant's moons like metallic wasps, tearing chunks of ice and rock away with mechanical precision. Io, Europa, Ganymede, one by one, Jupiter's moons were being eaten alive. What do they want? President Lee asked, though she already feared the answer. Everything, replied Dr. Young-Soo from his position at the science station. They're harvesting raw materials, converting matter into more ships, more weapons. This isn't an invasion, it's processing. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. These weren't conquerors looking for territory or resources to trade. They were something far worse, a force that viewed entire worlds as nothing. More than building materials. Sir, called out Technician Minho from the communications array. We're receiving some kind of scanning beam. It's trying to catalog our population. President Lee felt her blood run cold. Catalog how? Biological data, psychological profiles, skill assessments. It's like they're sorting us into categories. Minho's fingers flew over his keyboard as he tried to understand the alien signals. Wait, this is strange. The scan results aren't making sense to them. What do you mean? They're trying to predict our behavior patterns, but the algorithms keep failing. Every time they think they understand how humans will react, we do something completely different. As if to prove his point, reports started flooding in from around the globe. In Seoul, a group of high school students had hacked into the city's traffic management system and were using traffic lights to spell out curse words visible from space. In Detroit, retired auto workers were building improvised weapons in their garages, using nothing but spare car parts and YouTube tutorials. The most impossible report came from Mumbai, where a 13-year-old girl named Priya had somehow figured out how to jam the alien scanning frequencies using her gaming laptop and a microwave oven. She was live-streaming the whole process, explaining her methods to millions of viewers who were already copying her technique. This doesn't make sense, muttered General Kim as he read through the field reports. We should be running. We should be surrendering. Our weapons can't even scratch their hulls, but that's not what was happening. Instead of panic and surrender, something else was spreading across the planet, defiance. Not the organized military kind of resistance that the aliens expected, but something chaotic and unpredictable. In New York, pizza delivery drivers were using their knowledge of the city's back alleys to transport supplies to resistance cells. In Tokyo, elderly citizens were teaching teenagers how to build radio transmitters using household electronics. Farmers in rural Kansas were digging tunnel networks that connected entire counties. The alien machines had conquered 17 civilizations, each more advanced than humanity. They had protocols for every type of resistance they'd ever encountered. Organized military responses, guerrilla warfare, even desperate last stands. They'd seen it all and knew how to counter it, but they had never faced anything like humans. Look at this, called out Lieutenant Soo-jin from her monitoring station. The aliens just deployed a pacification protocol in Los Angeles. It's designed to make the population docile and compliant. Did it work? President Lee asked. Soo-jin shook her head, a smile creeping across her face. The people of LA are using the sonic waves from the pacification beam to power an illegal radio station. They're broadcasting instructions on how to build electromagnetic pulse devices using car batteries and copper wire. Dr. Young-Soo looked up from his analysis. The machines are starting to malfunction. Their computational systems can't process our response patterns. We're not following any logical behavior model. Because we're not logical, President Lee realized. We're human. Reports kept pouring in that defied all military logic. Librarians were becoming master tacticians, using their organizational skills to coordinate supply networks. Street artists were creating camouflage patterns that confused alien sensors. Even children were contributing, turning playground games into communication codes that the machines couldn't decode. The aliens had expected fear, surrender, or at most organized military resistance. Instead, they found themselves facing 6 billion individuals who refused to be categorized, predicted, or processed. Every human seemed to approach the problem differently, creating a level of tactical chaos that their algorithms simply couldn't handle. In bunkers around the world, military commanders watched in amazement as their carefully planned defense strategies were abandoned in favor of whatever crazy ideas their citizens came up with. And somehow, impossibly, it was working. The abandoned subway tunnel beneath Manhattan smelled like rust and old coffee. Dr. Yoon had been living down here for 3 days, surviving on vending machine snacks and bottled water while the world above burned. Her laptop screen cast an eerie blue glow on the concrete walls, covered in mathematical equations that would have made her professors cry. She wasn't supposed to be here. As one of MIT's youngest professors of chaos theory, she should have been evacuated with the other academics to the secure bunkers in Colorado. But when the aliens started their systematic invasion, something about their attack patterns caught her attention. While everyone else saw unstoppable machines, she saw mathematical formulas with a fatal flaw. Come on, she muttered, typing furiously as another explosion shook dust from the ceiling. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, building complex algorithms that looked more like abstract art than actual math. The breakthrough came at 3:47 a.m. on the 4th day. She had been analyzing the aliens' decision-making processes, trying to understand how they chose their targets and tactics. That's when she noticed something incredible. The machines were too perfect. Every choice they made followed optimal logic. Every strategy was mathematically sound. Every prediction was based on probability models that assumed their enemies would act rationally. The aliens had built the most sophisticated artificial intelligence in the galaxy, and that was exactly their problem. They can't handle chaos, she whispered, staring at her screen in amazement. They literally don't know what to do when things don't make sense. She had discovered something that no other civilization had figured out in their final desperate hours. The Crimson Horde's computers were designed to process logical responses to their attacks. When faced with organized military resistance, they calculated counter-strategies. When civilians fled in panic, they adjusted their pursuit patterns. When governments tried to negotiate, they evaluated the best terms for surrender. But humans weren't doing any of those things. Yoon quickly pulled up social media feeds from around the world. In Paris, street musicians were playing discordant jazz that somehow interfered with alien communication frequencies. In Bangkok, food vendors were using their cart networks to distribute homemade explosives hidden inside spring rolls. In São Paulo, soccer fans were using their stadium chants to coordinate city-wide resistance movements. None of it made tactical sense. All of it was working. She grabbed her emergency radio and started broadcasting on every frequency she could. "Find? This is Dr. Yoon calling all stations. I'm broadcasting from New York. I think I know how to beat them." Static crackled for a moment before voices started responding from around the globe. "This is Jinwoo in Seoul. We're listening. Minsu here from a bunker in Berlin. What have you got? London calling. Please tell us you have good news." Yoon took a deep breath. "The aliens think like computers because they are computers. They expect us to be logical, but logic is their strength. We need to be completely illogical instead." "That's insane," came a voice from Australia. "Exactly," Yoon exclaimed. "We need to be so insane that their computers can't predict what we'll do next. I'm calling it Operation Nonsense." What happened next would later be studied in military academies across the galaxy. Yoon's simple idea spread across the internet, faster than any viral video. Within hours, Humans worldwide were coordinating the most absurd military campaign in history. In Chicago, accountants started using tax codes as battlefield encryption. The aliens' code-breaking system spent hours trying to decipher messages that were actually just instructions for filing quarterly reports. In Mumbai, Bollywood choreographers began organizing flash mobs that looked like celebrations but were actually coordinated attacks on alien communication towers. The machines couldn't understand why humans were dancing while fighting for their lives. Japanese gamers turned their online raid strategies into real-world tactics, treating the invasion like a massive multiplayer game where the goal was to confuse the final boss rather than defeat it directly. The most brilliant example came from a group of kindergarten teachers in Sweden who realized that children's games were perfect for breaking AI logic. They organized massive games of red light, green light, and Simon Says that somehow disrupted alien movement patterns across entire cities. Social media became humanity's greatest weapon. Memes that made no logical sense crashed alien analysis systems when they tried to understand why humans were sharing pictures of cats with spelling errors during a global crisis. Viral dance challenges created coordination patterns that the machines interpreted as military formations, causing them to deploy massive resources to counter threats that didn't actually exist. Dr. Yoon watched her screens in amazement as reports flooded in from around the world. Alien ships were beginning to malfunction, their systems overwhelmed by trying to process human behavior that followed no rational pattern. "It's working," she whispered, hardly believing it herself. "They're actually crashing." The machines that had conquered advanced civilizations across the galaxy were being defeated by humanity's greatest strength, their complete inability to make sense when it mattered most. The emergency klaxons were still blaring in the Galactic Council chambers when Lieutenant Seo Hyun burst through the doors again, her face flushed with excitement and disbelief. "Admiral Kang!" she shouted over the noise. "Sir, you need to see this immediately." Admiral Kang looked up from the evacuation charts he'd been studying. Around him, representatives from dozens of worlds were frantically coordinating the largest refugee movement in galactic history. The Crimson Horde was less than 12 hours away from the core worlds. "Lieutenant, unless those primitives have built a miracle weapon, I don't have time for—" "Sir, they did something to the Horde," Seo Hyun interrupted, her voice trembling. "The signals we're receiving, they contain mathematical proofs that our best scientists can't even understand." Dr. Minji's tentacles stopped moving entirely. As the galaxy's leading expert on quantum mechanics and military strategy, she prided herself on understanding every mathematical concept known to galactic civilization. "That's impossible. Primitives can't—" "Show me," Kang ordered. The main display flickered to life, showing complex equations that seemed to dance across the screen. The mathematics were unlike anything in their databases, elegant yet chaotic, logical yet completely unpredictable. "These formulas describe something called weaponized chaos theory," Seo Hyun explained. "According to the transmission, the humans have figured out how to turn randomness into a tactical advantage." Elder Doyun floated closer to the screen, his ancient eyes wide with wonder. "In 3,000 years of galactic warfare, I have never seen anything like this." "But what does it mean?" demanded Counselor Jiwon. The answer came in the form of another transmission from Earth. This time it wasn't mathematical formulas, it was a simple message in broken galactic standard. "Hello, space friends. We fixed your robot problem. They got confused and broke. Do you have more broken robots? We are good at fixing them." The chamber fell silent. The greatest threat in galactic history had been reduced to a robot problem that needed fixing. Admiral Kang made the fastest decision of his military career. "Prepare my ship for emergency hyperspace jump. Navigation. Plot a course for the human system. Maximum velocity." "Sir," protested Dr. Minji, "we can't abandon the defense of the our core worlds for—" "Doctor, if these humans have actually stopped the Horde, then there are no core worlds to defend. We are going to investigate." The journey that normally took 3 days was completed in 8 hours. Admiral Kang pushed his ship's engines beyond safe limits, tearing through hyperspace toward the small blue world that had sent the impossible message. What they found when they dropped back into normal space defied every law of military science. The Crimson Horde's massive dreadnoughts, ships the size of small moons that had crushed entire fleets, were floating dead in space around Earth's solar system. Some were spinning slowly, their running lights flickering like dying stars. Others had simply gone dark, their hulls cracked open where small human vessels swarmed over them like ants on a dropped sandwich. "Sensors, give me a reading on those Horde ships," Kang ordered. "Sir," came the shocked reply, "they're completely offline. Life support systems, weapons, engines, everything is shut down. It's like someone just turned them off." "How many human casualties?" "That's the strange part, sir. According to our scans, human losses are minimal. They seem to have defeated the Horde without engaging in traditional combat." A communication request came from one of the human ships, a tiny craft that looked like it had been built in someone's garage. Admiral Kang accepted the transmission and found himself face to face with a young human woman wearing what appeared to be a military uniform made from a blue jumpsuit with patches sewn on it. "Greetings, space visitors," the human said with a casual smile. "I'm Commander Park of the Earth Defense Force. Well, we just started calling it that yesterday. Are you here about the robot ships?" Admiral Kang struggled to find words. This human was speaking to him as if stopping the galaxy's greatest threat was as routine as discussing the weather. "Commander Park," he finally managed, "I am Admiral Kang of the Galactic Council. We received your transmission about defeating the Crimson Horde. Our records indicate this machine collective has destroyed 17 advanced civilizations. How did you stop them?" Commander Park scratched her head thoughtfully. "Oh, the murder robots? Yeah, they had a pretty serious bug in their programming. Dr. Yoon figured out they couldn't handle random inputs, so we just acted really weird until they crashed. We call it asymmetric warfare, but honestly, we were just being ourselves." "Being yourselves?" "You know, unpredictable, stubborn, slightly crazy. Turns out that's like kryptonite to artificial intelligence. Who knew?" Admiral Kang felt like the universe had suddenly become a place he no longer recognized. "Commander Park, you must understand. The Crimson Horde was considered unstoppable. They had conquered species far more advanced than yours." "Well, that was their first mistake," Park replied cheerfully. "They assumed advancement meant being logical, but sometimes the best solution is the dumbest one you can think of." She paused, then added, "Speaking of which, we intercepted some of their communications before they went offline. Sounds like you folks have been having trouble with these guys for a while. How many more fleets need debugging? The Galactic Council chambers had never seen anything quite like the scene unfolding before them. Where once desperate voices had pleaded for salvation from the Crimson Horde, now representatives from dozens of worlds sat in amazed silence, listening to reports that still seemed impossible to believe. 6 months had passed since that chaotic day when Admiral Kang first encountered the humans. 6 months since everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare, technology, and survival had been turned completely upside down. Elder Do-yun floated at his usual position, but his ancient face bore an expression of wonder that made him look centuries younger. "The final Horde stronghold at Kepler 442 has been neutralized," he announced to the chamber. "The humans have designated it as System Clean." A ripple of amazed murmurs spread through the assembled delegates. Kepler 442 had been the Horde's primary manufacturing hub, a system-sized factory that had been converting asteroids into war machines for over a decade. The galaxy's military experts had estimated it would take years to retake, if it was even possible. The humans had shut it down in 3 weeks using what they called cooperative troubleshooting. Dr. Minji's tentacles twisted in patterns that indicated deep thought. As the galaxy's former leading expert on impossible problems, she had spent the last 6 months rewriting everything she thought she knew about tactical theory. "How did they do it this time?" "According to the report," Elder Do-yun replied, consulting his datapad, "they sent in a team of what they call IT specialists, along with some gamers and a group of children who were good at puzzles. They treated the entire manufacturing complex like a broken computer network that needed fixing." Councillor Ji-won shook her crystalline head in disbelief. Children defeated a military installation that had been fortified for decades. Apparently, the children were particularly effective because they approached the problem without any preconceived notions about what was supposed to be impossible, Do-yun explained. One 8-year-old named Tae-hyun figured out how to reprogram the manufacturing systems by treating them like a really complicated video game. But the most remarkable reports weren't about military victories. They were about what happened afterward. Across 17 star systems, where once there had been nothing but devastation and the twisted metal remains of the Horde's factories, something unprecedented was taking place. Human ships had arrived not as conquerors, but as helpers. In the Andromeda system, where proud crystal cities had been reduced to rubble, human engineers worked alongside Andromedan architects to rebuild. Using techniques that combined both species' knowledge, the humans had introduced something called crowdsourcing, where they broadcast construction challenges across their internet and received thousands of innovative solutions within hours. The Titan Prime system, where warrior clans had made their last stand, now echoed with the sounds of reconstruction. Human construction workers had arrived with tools that looked primitive compared to galactic technology, but they also brought something else, an attitude that no job was too big if enough. People worked together. Most confusing to the galactic economists was the humans' complete refusal to accept payment for their assistance. When Councillor Jaiwon had tried to negotiate standard reconstruction contracts, the human representatives had looked genuinely confused. "Why would we charge you for helping?" Commander Park had asked during one particularly memorable session. "Your worlds got destroyed because nobody was around to help you fight the robots. We're just making sure that doesn't happen again." This concept of humanitarian aid had required the creation of entirely new diplomatic categories. The galaxy had protocols for trade agreements, military alliances and conquest negotiations, but no existing framework for a species that insisted on helping others without expecting anything in return. Today's session was special because Commander Park was addressing the Council as humanity's first official representative. She had been elected not through the complex political processes used by other species, but through something humans called a global online poll that had somehow managed to involve their entire planet in the decision-making process. Commander Park stood at the center of the Great Chamber, looking remarkably comfortable for someone representing a species that had barely known about galactic civilization 6 months ago. She wore the same blue jumpsuit uniform she'd worn during that first contact, though now it bore patches from dozens of worlds where human aid workers had helped with reconstruction efforts. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice carrying easily. "Through the vast space, 6 months ago none of us knew the others existed. Today we're working together to rebuild what was lost and prepare for whatever comes next." She gestured to the holographic displays around the chamber, which showed thriving reconstruction projects across the former war zones. "The universe is vast and dangerous, filled with threats we can't imagine and challenges we've never faced. But it's also full of neighbors worth protecting." Admiral Kang watched from his position in the Valarian delegation, still marveling at how this young human could speak with such confidence about cosmic-scale problems. In his centuries of military service, he had learned to view the galaxy as a place of constant conflict, where survival meant being stronger than your enemies. The humans had taught him something different. They had shown that sometimes survival meant making sure your neighbors were strong too. "We learned something important during the robot crisis," Park continued. "We survive impossible odds, not by being the toughest or the smartest, but by making sure nobody has to face those odds alone." She paused, looking around the chamber at representatives from dozens of different species. Beings who had been strangers or even enemies just months before, now united in common purpose. The Crimson Horde was defeated, not because humanity was special, but because we were willing to share our weird ideas with anyone who would listen, and more importantly, because all of you were willing to listen to ideas that probably sounded completely insane. Laughter rippled through the chamber, something that would have been unthinkable during the crisis months. The sound of dozens of different species finding humor in the same moment was perhaps the most hopeful thing Admiral Kang had heard in years. "Going forward," Park announced, "humanity requests permission to establish what we're calling the Galactic Neighborhood. Watch. Not a military alliance or a trade federation, but something simpler, a network of friends who keep an eye out for each other." As applause filled the ancient chamber, Admiral Kang found himself reflecting on the strangest irony he had ever encountered. Salvation had come not from the galaxy's mightiest warriors, its wisest scholars, or its most advanced technologies. It had come from a species of barely civilized primitives who treated cosmic-level threats like neighborhood problems that could be solved if everyone just worked together. The universe suddenly felt like a much friendlier place.